and welcome to Commentary. I'm Tony Palmeri from the Department of Communication at UW Oshkosh, along with my co-host, former Oshkosh Mayor Jim Mather. Imagine that you lived in a city of 60,000 people with one major establishment newspaper. Imagine that that newspaper was of questionable quality. Imagine that the local establishment television and radio weren't so hot either. Chances are good that if you had some real interest in being informed as to what was actually going on in your community, you'd seek out alternative and independent media. Numerous people have told Mr. Mather and I that Commentary is a vital, independent alternative to what passes for news in our community. We believe that the same thing can be said about a new public affairs program in town. It's called Eye on Oshkosh, and we are pleased to be joined by the co-producers and co-hosts of that program, Melanie Bloechl and Cheryl Hentz. Melanie Bloechl is on our far right. She served 5 terms, or 11 and a half years on the Oshkosh Common Council, including 2 terms as mayor, right?
Correct.
2 terms as mayor. On the council, she developed a reputation for asking tough questions, something she now does on Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz is a journalist and active citizen. She's run for Winnebago County Board and has served on numerous citizen boards, and she does quite a bit for the Eye on Oshkosh website, which you can find at www.eyeonoshkosh.com. Melanie and Cheryl, thank you both so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for
being here. We love the shirts.
Yeah, thank you.
And I told Melanie before the show, if they get me a shirt at least once a month on Commentary, I will wear an Eye on Oshkosh shirt. Yep. I will do that. It's the blue collar.
It's the blue collar.
It works. Blue collar.
It works. It's a sleeve size.
That's our roots, the blue collar. Why did you start Eye on Oshkosh? Cheryl, we'll start with you.
Well, Melanie and I have talked about this for some time, and I kept saying, you know, we need to do this, we need to do this. And she wanted to wait until she got off the council. Then when she got off the council, she said, let's wait a little longer. But she couldn't wait any longer. She had things to say, and so we put it in the works, got things going.
Well, why did you want to do it? What did you see as the need for it?
I felt, as you said in your introduction, that people needed another avenue of information. And, you know, having been a journalist all my professional life, I felt that that was something that I could bring to the table. Her being in politics, you know, she added the political aura to it, and I just felt it would be a good mix.
Melanie, what do you see as the importance of Eye on Oshkosh, or why are you doing it?
Well, I think, Tony, you guys fill a niche, and I think it's more of a university intellectual, some of the things that you get into. I know, even with Jim. Even with Jim on the show, yeah.
You scared me.
Are you on the right stage, right? Yeah. And I think that some of the things that you get into on more of a federal and even educational level serve a certain group of people. I think overall your show, I've watched it, I've participated in it for a long time. I enjoy it. I go to your website often. You've got great links, keeps you posted on some of the stuff that's going on in other communities outside the walls of Oshkosh. But I really felt like coming from a blue-collar background and being kind of this, you know, never knew quite where you fit kind of niche. You weren't one of the good old boys, because obviously I'm a girl, but for obvious other reasons. I just felt like there was something that we could be doing and have the freedom to say some of the things that maybe I had to kind of bite my tongue when I was on the council. And Jim looks confused when I say that, but trust me, there were things that I really, really wanted to say, and because of the elected umbrella that you're under, people expect you to be of a higher caliber, to conduct yourself in a way that isn't always necessarily comfortable for me. I'm a much more outspoken person, and while people think they saw a lot of that, there was a lot more that I wanted to say that I did not. And this kind of gives me that springboard to just kind of be more of myself and relax a little bit without all the added pressures of being reflective of an entire council or an entire city under, you know, the headline of mayor. So.
All right, Jim.
Well, you say you're outspoken. You're not outspoken by very many people.
Ever.
Your show's half hour?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a weekly show. How do you script it? What is your subject matter? Does it tend to be local? Just what is the
Well,
format?
the scripting part is, as you guys know, you really just can't, at least what I do, and Cheryl and I have a different approach. Again, her journalistic background, my more political background. My approach is there's things that I really want to talk about and try to get people to talk to me about in a very layman-like fashion. So I try to be very conversational and try not to script too much of anything, because I think it's more of a give and take, and it loosens people up a little bit. And you know, I think when you're overly scripted, it limits your ability. And you know how it goes. I mean, you guys have had me on and other people on. One question sometimes catapults you into a totally different area that you had never prepared yourself to go into.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it exciting.
Well, maybe scripted is the wrong thing with Cheryl. Do you have a subject matter? Does it devolve around a guest?
Yes.
You do this ahead of time, and how do you make those selections?
Reading the newspaper, looking at different websites, watching council meetings, school board meetings, county board meetings, what have you. If there's something that we feel that people need to know more about, or is a pretty controversial issue, budgets are always controversial. The ethanol plant is a controversial thing. We're going to try and have someone on talking about that. If we see something along those lines, we will go ahead and get a guest booked, and then we'll sit down and we'll try and formulate some general type questions. We do our own independent research, then get together, put together some questions, and then the rest of it we just kind of fly by the seat of our pants.
When does the show air?
Well, we actually have, right now, you know, OCAT has a...
That's Oshkosh Cable Access Television.
Correct. They have a 6-show criteria that you have to produce 6 shows before they'll give you an actual time slot.
Oh.
They did give us a time slot slightly ahead of schedule. Starting November 11th, the show will be on every Monday night at 10:30.
Oh.
Every Friday night at Friday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. and then every Saturday night at 8:30 p.m.
Okay. So that'll give people
So you don't
ample
get away
time.
from us.
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, Monday night, you got Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Friday afternoon at 1:30.
Yeah.
You'll get the soap opera crowd.
Or the shift workers.
Sure.
All right.
Shift
Saturday at 8:30, you'll get quite a few viewers.
Yeah.
Cheryl, let's talk about what is your journalistic background? What have you written for?
Well, I've worked in radio and television in a number of states, as well as here in Wisconsin. I've also written for a division of journal communications, Fox Cities newspapers, which I worked for them for 2 years until they folded their operation this past January.
As a journalist, what's wrong with journalism in America? I took a not so subtle shot in the intro at what I call establishment journalism, because I think we've got some real problems in journalism. What do you think are some of the problems? Because I imagine you, like us, were motivated to participate in these kinds of activities because you see a problem with the mainstream journalism. What, in your judgment, is the problem?
I think the problem is editors and publishers who want to push their own viewpoints forward. You know, I've come in contact with a lot of reporters like myself, and you know, they'll sit down, they'll try and do a very good job, a balanced job of reporting, but when it comes out on the front page of the newspaper, it's chopped apart, and it's usually your editors who are doing that.
Right.
And it's all to push their own agenda forward, I think.
Doesn't tend to be the reporters necessarily. Have you experienced this, particularly in the print media? Write a nice story and you don't recognize it when it hits the paper?
Not so much with myself, Jim, because I will say I had, you know, we were a startup operation when I started with them. And we were a weekly community newspaper. They knew my background. They knew that I had a very good reputation for being a fair and honest reporter. They let me pretty much do what I wanted to do. I didn't even have anyone assigning stories to me. I sought out the stories and I presented the stuff, and they knew that both sides would be fairly represented, and they never chopped up stories. Even my headlines, I would write my own headlines. The other thing that I don't think a lot of people are aware of is in most newspapers, you know, you've got people who actually sit and write headlines. So the headline may come out different, with a different spin than the way the reporter actually wrote the story. And, you know, so it just gets all convoluted, I think.
I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
You both come from different backgrounds. How do you translate your journalism, your political, and kind of street experience into the show. Melanie, how does that, do you use those experiences?
Very patient. Cheryl's a very patient, kind person. We kind of have a standard conversation almost daily.
Multiple times a day sometimes.
And when I start going off, and I get very, very excited about things, and Cheryl's standard response is, well, we may have to tone that down just a little bit. So I think Cheryl's, we have different personalities too, and I think that they complement one another. Cheryl's more grounded and very, you know, level-headed, and is a much more calm, rational person, whereas I'm a little bit more hot-headed, maybe a little bit more passionate, and I'm ready to jump right in and think that I'm going to cure everything in the first 5 minutes. And you learn with age and dealing with people that sometimes you just have to let the jello sit a little bit before you actually have an idea of what's going to transpire. But as far as the media, how we meld, I think it's mutual respect for what each of us brings to the table. We don't always agree on politics.
Sure.
I mean, we have very different opinions, and I think that will also make the show very exciting because we're both very good at rancorous debate. I mean,
do you share Cheryl's criticism of editors? The executive editor of the Northwestern, Mr. Rickman, about a year ago, was writing about you when, well, you were still on the council, probably more than a year ago. He said, normally I don't waste my time paying attention to her syntax-fractured ranting against the Northwestern, but this time the public deserves
everything now.
But this time the public deserves to see her for what she is, a hypocrite and petty demagogue.
Oh, that was the one that came out on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the Easter Sunday
That was the
column.
Easter
That's
Sunday
right. Now,
column.
are you going to use your show to kind of keep the local press in check?
Absolutely, because they need it. I mean, they are not the know-all, end-all, be-all, and unfortunately, we have very few choices. Stu Rickman, unfortunately, has a much higher opinion of himself than anyone else in the community, and I'm sure if you ask them, they will tell you.
That's true of Jim also, by the way.
This is true.
It's probably true of all of us. We all think we're pretty special, but let the average person tell you what they think, and they'll get you right down back in your boot size. But
I never ask.
yeah, don't ask, don't tell. That's kind of the way of politics these days. I'm probably more critical because I'm not as patient with the media. I've never been a journalist. I don't really care to hear excuses about editors and publishers and money making and, you know, gee whiz, we've got criteria. Newspapers, in my mind, are supposed to be just that, newspapers. They are supposed to be informative pieces that get factual information out so that people can make an educated decision on what they think is right or wrong, not to predetermine ahead of time what's right for the people of Oshkosh.
But the editorial page is to provide opinions.
Well,
they
that's
should be
fine,
providing
but it
opinions
should,
also, right?
well, and it's fine if you feel as though it's appropriate for a local newspaper to be doing that. I don't believe a local newspaper should be doing endorsements. I really...
Oh, they shouldn't endorse candidates, you don't think?
I don't believe that. No, I
Why not?
really... Simply because, in my mind, no matter who wins, good, bad, indifferent, if you think they're a stinker, what have you, that will be proven in the course of time in reporting factual information about the person's record and how they vote, and that's what you need to report. But in my mind, no matter who wins, you will be forced to work with them. And you need to have some sort of open communication so that you can get information. I mean, what has happened right now, and you can see it with Greg Underheim, they're so busy puckering up and kissing his backside that they will not report what's really going on. Greg Underheim is not a nice guy. He's a liar.
But they didn't endorse him.
They didn't endorse him, but they didn't take him to the woodshed either. They didn't call him a liar. They didn't say that he lacked the stones that the good Lord gave him to say, this is wrong.
Well, whether someone's a liar, Cheryl, this is relative, is it not? I mean, one person's lie is another person's perspective.
But it's the factual
If
information
we disagree with Greg's perspective, that doesn't mean he's lying, does it?
Well, did he or did he not know what's been going on in the Assembly and the state legislature? I mean, and he's been there for 15 years. You'd either have to be blind or a moron not to know what's been going on in the state legislature for 15 years. I mean, you cannot in one hand say that you're the most experienced and qualified person for the job because I've been there so long and I know everybody and I know everything that's going on, and then on the other hand say, I really didn't know what was going on. You can't absolve yourself that way. You cannot deny your responsibility in these things going on by virtue of you just not stepping forward and having the courage and decency and responsibility to your constituents to say, this is wrong and I'm not going to do it.
I'd like to see Cheryl in her role now of moderating.
We're on somebody else's
Tone it
show
down.
now.
So how are you going to handle this, Cheryl?
Usually
it is
with
the
a
fourth
sock.
estate we're talking about.
You know, Melanie has excellent things to say. No, I don't always agree with her, but she is very passionate. I'm very passionate, too. I just express my passion in a slightly more calm way.
Responsible.
But, you know, I think by virtue of the types of votes that she was able to garner every time she ran, I think that people in this community, if they like Melanie Bloechl, they like just about everything about her. They may not agree with every single position that she takes, but I think that one of the things that they like about her is her passion and the way she takes up for the average Joe and Jane and says, when she speaks, I think she's speaking exactly what they would like to say if they were in a position to be able to say it.
What would you say to people who claim that you two both have some kind of vendetta going against the local press? I mean, we know, I just said they've been calling Melanie a hypocrite and a fraud. With you, Cheryl, the local news has been very critical of your performance.
Nice.
You've been on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yes.
And they said that the Oshkosh Common Council, talking about you, they said the Oshkosh Common Council would be well advised to take more care in future appointments to ensure potential members understand the scope and limitations of their reviews. They basically saying you don't know what you're doing on that board. They accused the board of showing disdain for its proper role. So, I mean, what would you say to people who claim you two are both involved in trying to get back at some of your enemies here?
Don't you say that's one hell of an endorsement? That's what I would say.
Well,
I'd say
it absolutely is not trying to get back at anybody. It's simply giving people another avenue for information so that they don't have to rely on the Oshkosh Northwestern spoon-feeding them the agenda that the Northwestern wants to put forth.
You don't have disdain for your role on the board of
Absolutely not. I'm very proud of that role. I'm proud of every single vote that I've made. And at the end of the day, I can look at myself in the mirror and be proud of the positions that I took.
Do you have a political or philosophical agenda
for the
as
show?
the show? Right, yes.
for the show. I don't.
No,
I mean,
I think the agenda is simply to present as much about a particular issue as we can and, you know, give the people some information, try and educate them, try and get people involved in the political process.
start thinking for themselves.
Well, let's talk about that's an excellent question that Jim just asked. Let's talk about your political philosophies in general. Melanie, you ran for office in a partisan race as a Republican, but I heard you talk at the Winnebago County Labor Council, and you tried to say to them that, well, your dad is a union guy, and your mom was a union person, both union people. Are you a Republican or not?
Well, you know, there have been many people who have told me that they thought I was having an identity crisis. And, you know, really, I'm a conservative when it comes to, there are certain beliefs that I have. And spending money on things like downtown redevelopment really goes against the grain when we have people who are struggling to buy groceries and older people trying to figure out, I mean, go stand in Kmart by the pharmacy sometime and watch what people are spending on pharmaceuticals. And when they're writing out the check and literally, and this is no exaggeration, literally look like they're going to break out into tears because they don't know how they're, all right, they've got the medication, but they can't go to the grocery store afterwards. They don't know how they're going to make it. So, you know, I have some very strong conservative beliefs, but then you move into a healthcare issue where I don't think that there should be any person that goes without quality care. I believe the state of Wisconsin should be an any willing provider state, that no insurance company should be able to pick who your doctor is. No insurance company should be able to dictate the kind of medication that you have. So when you go to that side, I sound like a screaming liberal. You know, I mean, it sounds very liberal, and then you have very conservative views. So, you know, I guess I guess what I was doing, if I'm going to be honest, is I thought in this community, running as a Republican was the safest thing to do because it was a Republican community. I've been a participant in the Republican politics here. You know, I was a member of the Republican Party. They would probably woefully deny that because I don't think there's anybody there that's going, hey, Mel, come on over and have a martini when I go into Robbins. You know, I mean, I'm not warmly received there because I raise hell whenever I've participated.
Cheryl, where do you fall on that? Now, you ran for a nonpartisan office.
Correct, yeah. I'm a registered Democrat. However, I do not believe in voting party lines. I vote for the person. You know, I'm a registered Democrat because I had to register in one place or another. I think in some respects I'm very much like Melanie is. You know, I'm a very conservative Democrat, or
on spending issues? Like, are you as opposed to using money on downtown redevelopment as she is?
Well, I don't know that I'm as opposed to it. I think we have to develop downtown somehow. Some of the stuff that I see going on down there, though, you know, tearing down buildings and turning them into green space, I don't agree with that. We do have to develop it, but there could have been another use for that Walgreens building, for example.
Taxable use.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, who was going to put anything? Were there any plans? I mean, you were on the council, Melanie. Was it realistic to think that somebody was going to develop there?
I think it's absolutely realistic, especially when the city, in our CDGB money, which is Community Development Block Grant money, which we get from the federal government, gives a portion of that to an organization called CHAMCO and OCDC. And OCDC stands for the Oshkosh Commercial Development Corporation, which is supposed to be out stumping for the city to make sure downtown businesses stay in downtown, that they're vital, that they're doing. And anybody who's watched the budget process and the CDGB money being spent, I have consistently, or did consistently, request that we cancel the contract with OCDC.
Yeah, you've publicly lashed them several times.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Because I think they're woefully inadequate and have not done the job, and thereby it's fallen on the backs of the taxpayers to pay for these ridiculous expenditures for parks in the middle of downtown that produce absolutely nothing than somebody's idea of aesthetically pleasing areas. I mean, we have an entire riverfront which is 2 blocks away that if you really wanted to do something sound and aesthetically pleasing that would still generate interest, you should have started there. My personal belief is that they purposely started in this ridiculous park, knowing full well that the riverfront was still going to have to be done because obviously it's an integral part. Where Oshkosh on the water, you're still going to have to do those things if you're going to make any sense. But you start with the ridiculous first, and then you move to the essentials later because now it's got that snowball effect to it. So the money will continue to be spent.
So you don't buy the idea that the ridiculous park, as you call it, does bring people downtown? It does bring. I mean, I see people there all the time.
Exactly, but
doesn't it get bodies? We want bodies downtown,
But
right?
what are they doing down there?
Yeah, are they shopping in the shops?
Some are having coffee across the street.
But I guess what I'm saying is for the dollars that have been invested in any business environment, you have to quantify your expenditures and qualify those expenditures.
Right.
If you're going to do that, then there has to be some measure as to doing those things. For the dollars that have been spent, can they quantifiably state or qualify that you're going to get X amount of benefit on those kinds of dollars?
Have you, or are you going to get some guests and have some dialogue about this issue? Get somebody from the city? Has it happened yet?
No.
We're still pretty new, so we're keeping everybody warm.
Because this is a very, very local issue that really could resonate, and you might get some other...
The problem with those kinds of issues is the horse is already out of the barn.
Yeah.
It's kind of like WAMCO, Wisconsin Manufacturing Association, when the city allowed a TIF district to be done, and I was one of the people that was on the council at the time. The conversation that the community development director, which is Jackson Kinney, had with us is that TIF district had to be done in order to be able to demolish the Murphy concrete site, which was adjacent to, because you have to have pieces of property that are contiguous, you know, that they connect in some fashion in order for the monies to be expended for the bulldozing. There was never a conversation at any time of redevelopment, relocation of WAMCO. So to come back a year later and state that we should have known that this redevelopment was going to occur, we should have known that the discussion for relocation for this particular manufacturing area should have been, is just simply disingenuous.
So you're saying you were on the council and you didn't get good information.
Not only did we not get good information, it was totally misleading information, because the whole impetus to creating the TIF district was to address the Murphy concrete site.
And much of this conversation was in closed session, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, now that you're out of the council, can you tell us a little bit more about these closed sessions? Wouldn't you agree that much conversation that goes on in closed session in the city should not be in closed session?
Yes, and I was, really beat up upon because, and quite frankly, I'm probably the most outspoken, or was one of the most outspoken people in those, and probably one of the more colorful ones. Mm-hmm. And I had no problem with tape recordings, taking minutes, do what you want to do. I wouldn't say anything in those that I wouldn't say on the council dais.
They didn't take minutes, did they?
No. The minutes consist of the executive sessions called to order at 7:05,
Right.
so-and-so is present, we took the roll call, and then discussion ensues. Meeting is adjourned at such and such a time, and done.
You've dealt with some, now, how many shows have you had? Up to
6.
now?
Five, and well, I thought 6
Yeah,
because they gave us our time.
This week we'll be taping our 6th.
I'd be interested to know what sorts of subject matter you've had. Guests, for example. This may be tough to answer. Who was your best guest? Who was your worst guest? Who refused to appear? Could you talk a little bit about
We were our own best.
people you've asked?
No, I don't mean that to sound heady or egotistical, but that was well, maybe it should be qualified as that was the most fun show that we had.
It was a fun
Which
show.
one?
Cheryl and I, we started a segment that was called Another Viewpoint, and there were things that were coming up on the council and that were coming up that were very controversial, and it was like there was really no singular guest that could cover all of these different kind of things that we wanted to talk about.
Wasn't that your most recent show?
Yeah. And so what we decided to do is we decided that her and I were going to just basically go in and kind of give our views, the rundown of the elections and different things that had kind of come up that really, I think I used the word frost my cookies or something like that.
You did.
You mentioned that.
And,
I recall
yeah,
that.
and it was really,
You didn't mean icing, I take it.
not icing, no. But it was really a lot. I think it was the most fun because it was the most liberating.
What about your guest, Cheryl? Who'd you haven't had that many, but
Let's see. Our first one was Jim Simmons from the university here.
Yeah, he was good.
We were trying to get people to understand, and Jim was very good in explaining why our primary process is the way it is. Because a lot of people were obviously frustrated with the primary election in September because you could only vote in one party or another.
Right.
People felt a little disenfranchised, I think. So we had him on talking about that. We've also had on Sheriff Mike Brooks talking about his campaign.
did you have his opponent on?
We invited Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, well, he told me he'd call me back, and he didn't. When Mel called him, what did he tell you?
He wanted to keep his powder dry. That was a mistake.
He was going to save it for the League of Women Voters, and he was, I think, pretty much effectively shut down there. So he could have come on the show and had 30 minutes to talk. So no, he did not come on. We did have Jim Genizio. We had Mike Brooks.
We also invited Mr. Underheim, who declined to show up. I think he might have been a little intimidated because he wasn't going to throw any bull around that table with me.
How did he decline? Did he say no, or I'm afraid, or how did he say this?
I generally book the majority of the guests or try. When I spoke with him, he initially told me that he was going to decline because his opponent, Mr. Genizio, was just doing a lot of mudslinging, and he would just let Genizio sling mud by himself. And he didn't want to get wrapped up in that. And I assured him that, while we wouldn't be having a debate per se, we would not allow things to get out of hand.
We got to stop you there, Cheryl. We're going to take a break for a public service announcement. When we get back, we're going to ask Melanie and Cheryl about more of their views on political issues, including why they were such big fans of E.J. Jelinski. Stay with us.
Well, that would give us a few minutes to think.
Follow up on the Underheim thing and just explain.
This is me. And my mom and dad. And my big brother, Alex. And Jack. This is the day I learned that sandals got their name from sand. That jellyfish aren't made of jelly. That stars don't just come from the sky. That the ocean is bigger than all of us. This is the day we all got to forget I was sick. This was my wish.
Ah, yes, getting started. For most Americans, it can be very difficult, especially when it comes to saving money. But once you wake up to the fact that if you don't start saving now, you just might have the opportunity to work forever. And that can be a real eye-opener. Saving for your financial future is easier than you think. Get started and choose to save. It will pay off in the long run.
Free exercise guide for folks over 50. Call 1-800-222-2225.
Welcome back to Commentary. Tony Palmeri and Jim Mather here with Melanie Bloechl and Cheryl Hentz. They are the co-producers and co-hosts of the hottest new public affairs TV show in Oshkosh. It's called Eye on Oshkosh. They've got the fashion statement going and everything. When we left, Jim was asking about Mr. Underheim and the rationale he gave for refusing to appear on Oshkosh.
I think it's interesting. In all the times we've done commentary, and we've done it almost consistently since 1991, I can only recall of two people who did not wish to appear, who refused. One was Scott McCallum, who didn't even have the courtesy to answer emails. All of the Democrats appeared, Ed Thompson, Jim Young, Alan Eisenberg. They were here, but Mr. McCallum didn't. The other was Mr. Underheim. Now, he didn't decline. He refused. And I called him on the phone, got him from Madison. He called me, I presume not on his dime. And I told him that Tony Palmeri will not be there because Tony has supported Mr. Genesio. I wouldn't be there because I had an ophthalmologist appointment. They're tough to get.
Sure.
Still refused to come on our show. Now, I don't know what that says, except maybe there's a little defensiveness. How did you infer, I guess, your first turn down?
Cowardice.
Well, I guess I would share that view. He said he didn't want to be part of the mudslinging that he claims Mr. Genesio was doing. I told him that it would not come down to that. We would not allow that to get out of hand. But by the same token, you have to allow someone to be critical of your job performance, because after all, that's probably why they're running for office, is they feel that they can do it better. I even told him that I would call him, but he said, well, let me see how the radio interview goes. He was apparently going to do something on WOSH. I told him I would call him back after that. Well, it got canceled on one date, then it was supposedly rescheduled for the following week. I don't know if it ever did come off or not, but I did call him the following Wednesday anyway, and he said, no, I'm just going to pass on it. Okay, fine.
So both of you don't subscribe to the theory that an incumbent really shouldn't put him or herself in a situation where they might lose votes. I mean, the professional politicians will say, hey, look, if you're an incumbent,
Right.
why give your challenger more attention? You don't buy into that.
Well, not only do I not buy into it, but who the hell do they think they are that they have I mean, whether you like me, Melanie Bloechl, as a person or not, I am still a taxpayer and I'm a constituent. And, you know, if you're invited onto a show, I think it's almost obligatory that you show respect. It's an opportunity for people to hear what you have to say, a whole new round of questions that isn't the same old stale crapola that you get on the League of Women Voters, that they actually have cue cards made up for ahead of time. I'm not kidding you. They actually have cards because the questions have been asked year after year after year that they can actually flip to that particular card and read the standard answer. Now, somebody's got to shake things up here a little bit, and if they're too afraid to come on and be asked a legitimate question, they really don't have any place in the State House. They got a place in a different house, but it isn't the State House.
And why would you not want to take advantage of basically free publicity? I mean, that's how I view it. We were giving Mr. Underheim, Mr. Lennon, Mr. Priebe, we were giving all these folks, and Mr. Hughes, every one of them was given an opportunity for free publicity to get their message out. And they declined or refused.
Now, both of you were big supporters of E.J. Jelinski. This was the person who exposed what is still alleged corruption within Joe Paulus's DA office. What did you, we'll start with you, Cheryl. What did you find about Jelinski to be so appealing?
I found him to be, most of all, I think, courageous. You know, this is a young man who saw something that he believed to be wrong, something going on that he did not feel should be going on, and he put his job on the line. He knew that he was risking his job to bring out something that, as I said, he believed was going on that should not be. That took a lot of gall. That took monumental gall to do.
But he really didn't bring out what I think he intended. Isn't there something a little bit sleazy about wearing a wire to kind of get the goods on somebody, particularly when he got the wrong goods, as a matter of fact, because apparently there was no smoking gun. Weren't you a little uncomfortable with, even if he didn't wear it into the men's room?
No, I really wasn't,
noise
because,
probably
you know, I know that a lot of people were uncomfortable with that. I personally wasn't, because I guess I just feel like if everything is being done above board, then it shouldn't matter if you're being tape recorded or not. Not only that, but based on what a lot of people have said about Joe Paulus, if he is this frightening of an individual, if you fear for your job or you feel some type of retaliation in some way, I guess you have to try and do whatever it is you have to do within the parameters of the law to protect yourself. Now, of course, you know, he didn't know what he was going to necessarily get on tape. I mean, he had no idea that he was going to get all this other stuff on tape. He was just simply trying to get on tape.
But he made it public.
Yes, he did.
Now, did you support him for other reasons, or just because he was trying to blow the whistle?
I felt we needed someone different in that office. I have felt that way for a little while, not a real long time, but when I started hearing things, hearing rumblings of things going on, yeah, I started feeling that perhaps we needed someone different in the office, and I liked his courage.
Melanie, you wrote a letter to the paper. You said, if doing the right thing were easy, everyone would do it. We must give credit to those who do, because if people don't stand up for what's right, things never become right. So you think Jelinski stood up for what was right?
Yes.
You're not bothered by these tactics of hidden tape recorders?
No. When you're dealing with people who are willing to cut deals before people are charged.
But that's all. This is all alleged still.
Well,
nothing's been documented yet.
The bottom line is that this young man was in this office a very short time, was able to articulate very clearly to people, including the FBI and the OLR, which is the Office of Lawyer Regulations, that there was something definitely amiss in this office, and they took it seriously enough that they began an investigation. Now, I think those of us who are sitting around this dais right now are not foolish enough to believe that the Federal Bureau of Investigation comes swooping into Oshkosh questioning people on a whim and a wing and a prayer. You also had several circuit court judges who also had been able to stipulate and document their concerns and forward that not only to the FBI but to the OLR. And this had been going on for a period of time. This didn't just start when Ed Jelinski came into the office. These judges had been able to document this kind of behavior years previous to this. It just took this one young man who actually had some scruples to say, you know, and maybe it's because he was young and he still believed in some responsibility and basic values that,
And in some justice.
and that you know, we are here to uphold the law. You know, we don't get to fuzzy the edges of it. And do I like tape recording? I'll tell you, as a person who has watched unscrupulous people rise in the ranks and how they conduct themselves, I think that you're going to see a lot more technology being used.
Can you explain that?
Well, I think you're seeing in the state legislature. I mean, you're seeing the caucus scandals and the campaign finance laws, that all the edges are getting real fuzzy as to who can take campaign money and how we can filter it through PACs. I think you're going to see more and more people who are going to be using these types of things to be able to prove, because what ends up happening in our society is it's his word against my word. And do you believe a 15-year incumbent, or do you believe this young kid coming out of the chute who's just gutsy enough to say what's on their mind?
But all he got, Melanie, in the long run was sex talk.
Well, but the bottom line is it was sex talk that was actually happening on work hours. I mean, you're banging the broad over the desk in the DA's office and nobody's got a problem with that? I mean, I find that deplorable.
All right, well, when the smoke cleared on September 10th, that was primary day, your guy Jelinski got 16% of the Republican vote, blown out.
Sure.
So what, are people not as enlightened as you two, or not as much into justice?
No,
How come Jelinski lost, not just did he lose, he really lost
big.
Big, how come?
Because I think that their people became a little self-righteous. I think people got that indignant, oh my God, he tape recorded, and you know what it is? We're all human beings, and any one of us tape recorded could have said something very inappropriate at any given time. But the bottom line is this was stuff activities that were going on in our district attorney's office. As the mayor of the city of Oshkosh, if I would have had an office, which Jim and I both know I never did, but you know, if somebody comes into my office and I'm talking about doing inappropriate things on taxpayers' time and they get me on tape, that the general public actually would make excuses for me. I just,
and yet, Melanie,
I don't
Jim,
understand
just
it.
probe this one last thing. And yet, Melanie, when it was found that one of the mayors of Oshkosh was using the city attorney as his private attorney, asking him to go after a citizen whose website he didn't like, you publicly defended that mayor.
I think what I said is that I thought it was inappropriate that he handled the conversation the way that he did. And I still agree with that. I think that John Dell'Antonia saying, you know, nail this guy
to the cross.
Yeah, nail him to the cross. It was inappropriate. Could I have been the one to say it? Yeah. Yeah.
How come you didn't?
How come I didn't say nail this guy to the cross?
No, how come you didn't? You weren't more outspoken at the time saying it was inappropriate. This took a long, long time before anybody on the Common Council spoke about this.
I think probably for the same reasons that the public rallied behind Joe Paulus, is because it was like, I was probably thinking the exact same thing, and had it been a different day, I probably would have maybe written the same thing. I don't know that. I'm just saying that I could have very easily made that same mistake. I didn't, but could I say that I could have? Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
You're, on your most recent show, you several times asked for public input.
Yes.
You know, call us, write us. I'd have to assume that even prior to that time you have gotten some input. Have you gotten response to that request at this point? And what are people telling you? What do they want to see? Are they saying, gee, I don't like what you're doing, I like what you're doing? Tell us about feedback.
Well, there's not been a tremendous amount of feedback right now, and I think part of that, Jim, is because we haven't had a regular time slot. It's just kind of been shown at a hodgepodge of times. People haven't really been sure when to see it. But we have gotten some letters. You know, one of the city council members wrote us and said that while he didn't necessarily agree with every position that was stated, He felt the show was well done, well produced, and informative or educational. I think it was informative, wasn't it? The
And
word that
certainly
he
let
used?
us know that he would be a regular
And he
viewer.
said he would be a regular viewer.
Want to guess who it might be?
You know, there's
Do I
been
get 7 guesses?
Only 6. There's one woman.
Yeah, there have been a few other people who have written suggesting questions for upcoming guests, that kind of thing, and we'll certainly ask those questions.
Has anybody said, hey, I don't like what's going on? Or has it been positive heretofore?
I think we may get some negative stuff once we get the regular, broadcasting times, because again, I bring that element of controversy and
Well, and you're never going to get people to agree with you 100% of the time. If I could just go back to the tape recording for 1 second. Mr. Paulus himself uses tape recording when he wants to get the goods on someone that he is trying to prosecute. And his name is escaping me, but the police detective, John Maloney from Green Bay, I mean, he not only had this guy's girlfriend wear a wire, but he put a camera in a hotel room. Now, he was trying to get the goods on somebody so that he could fully prosecute him. And I look at what E.J. Jelinski did as somewhat of the same. So, no, I don't have a problem with it. Anyway, I just wanted to get that point in. So.
Okay, so you're not bothered by subordinates in any workplace wearing wires and getting the goods on their boss?
No, then they should behave themselves.
Okay.
Well, this show is being recorded by
Right, we are being recorded
We
right
got
now.
the light.
Both of you have been very, very critical of our state legislature, as we know. This budget repair bill, I asked citizens to write letters, and both of you two did. Melanie said that they, the legislature, have raped and pillaged this state's future. They've looked you all in the eye, smiled, and lied to get reelected, because, ladies and gentlemen, that is all that matters, the heady power. And then you say, don't pee on my shoe and tell me it's raining.
Yeah, that sounds like pretty
Lying
accurate.
thieves, Melanie?
Yes.
That's...
What would you call somebody who steals money out of your back pocket, looks at you and says, I'm spending it on this, but never really does?
You share this view, Cheryl? That because Melanie seems to be saying not only has this modern legislature made some bad votes and bad decisions, you're saying that they're corrupt. Mm-hmm. You agree? Is this a corrupt legislature right now?
I think so.
The caucus scandal.
No.
She's accusing them of robbing money from us.
Well, I think that's exactly what they did with the tobacco money. That tobacco money was given to various states, Wisconsin included, for tobacco-related illnesses and so forth. It was not given to us to
plug the hole.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. To plug this huge gaping hole.
Temporarily, also.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A year from now, 10 months from now, we're going to be back in the same boat, but the boat's going to be sinking that much faster.
But isn't there a difference between bad judgment and corruption? Because what they did was legal with the tobacco settlement. Even Jim Doyle was asked for an opinion. He said, yeah, it's legal, it's just stupid. Mm-hmm. But you, Melanie, especially, more so than Cheryl, seem to equate bad judgment with corruption.
Well, I think that I connotate the two together. I draw them together because our legislature has been sold off to the highest bidder. And I don't think that anyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, I don't care who you are, what nationality, can straight-faced look at the campaign documents, where the reports of any of these candidates, and honestly look at me and say, when you're seeing that the insurance companies are spending the thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars on candidates that they are sending money to, that these different lobbying organizations are not gaining favor when they can write these kinds of checks. We are not only losing our democracy, but it's actually being sold to the highest bidder. That is corruption. That is theft of my democracy. It's a thievery of the lowest level and the highest contempt.
Well, then how does this work at the Common Council level? Because in your heyday in the mid-'90s, you said that we had a shadow government running the city. And of course, people get elected to the council spending very little.
Yes.
Some spend, I think, absurdly high amounts for a common council seat.
Yeah.
But how does the shadow government, first of all, what is it, and how does it grab control of the city government?
Well, I think we all know what it is. It's your Chamber of Commerce's. It's the businesses that you see like C.R. Meyer and Ganther Construction. These are people that are making sure that they are giving money to the Grand Opera House and making sure that there is enough activity going on there so that when the Mark Harris's and John Delantonia's add $70,000 onto the Grand Opera House's operating budget, that they can actually quantify that expenditure and qualify it by saying, well, gee, we have all these wonderful acts in here, and Ganther Construction sponsored it, and Bill Castle sponsored it, and C.R. Meyer sponsored it, and gee, we've got a going thing. And as soon as the $70,000 is added to the operational budget, all of a sudden, all of these companies are cutting back on their promotional activities and no longer sponsoring at the level that they originally did. Now, you know, that may seem in the large scheme of things, when you're dealing with the kinds of things that we are on a state and federal level, that it's not that big of a deal. But I'm telling you, you cannot afford to let go by an inch, because every inch, you know, it's like your daddy always used to tell you, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And I am, you know, the Chamber of Commerce, well, gee, we need more downtown redevelopment. The Northwestern, we need downtown redevelopment. Who benefits from that? It is the Oshkosh Northwestern. Their business happens to be located right off of the main drag. Whose property becomes more valuable when taxpayers' dollars are spent aesthetically pleasing the surrounding property owners? Those property owners, and they're not reinvesting in their own pieces of property. We need to force these people, if you want these things to happen, to start setting up programs so that the private entities start coughing up instead of the taxpayers being responsible for it.
Are you saying have you observed a quid pro quo somewhere? It seems to me that while there does seem to be undue influence, that it's legal. Now, do you have evidence that maybe something else is going on?
I don't have any evidence. Am I uncomfortable with it? Yeah. Do I feel a responsibility to constantly voice my lack of comfort? Yeah. Is it constituted now as being legal? Yeah, but who are the people who are making the rules? We get the same corruption with the same people making the rules as to what's legal. Do you trust these guys to make the rules for all of us? I don't. I mean, I got Greg Underheim deciding what's in the best interest of the city of Oshkosh, who also happens to have to come back here to get reelected, and all the same Chamber of Commerce, C.R. Myers, Ganthers, whomever, are the ones writing him checks, and they write the rules that we all live by. So, do I have some concerns? Yeah, and that's what differentiates me from the Greg Underheims and some of these other people who have kept their pie holes shut for 15 years. I don't care. You have a gut feeling when something is right and when it's wrong, because when you're raised, you know the difference between right and wrong. And are you always right about your feelings? No, but to not even say anything because for fear you might step on the speaker's toes and you might not get that cushy healthcare committee chairmanship.
Well, Cheryl, as the kind of organizer and guest caller and producer of this show, doesn't this sound like grist for the mill of a future production? Wouldn't it be appropriate to begin to get some current city council people in fact, even some of the developers, the construction people, because it sounds like there may be an issue?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think because of when we started the show, it was so close to election time, we wanted to try and get the candidates on. But now that the election is effectively over, by the time this show airs, it will be over, we can start focusing on some of these more controversial issues that affect people daily in the city. So,
Melanie, since you left the Oshkosh Common Council, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, the length of the meetings seems to have cut in half.
You can see why.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you asked lots and lots of questions. Many people thought you were extremely irritating. They thought your questions were stupid. But you were the first to admit that some of your questions were stupid, right? Well, you went on there as an uneducated, so-called citizen.
No, really I was.
Right. So do you think the current council is not asking enough questions? I'll tell you the truth. I'm at the point where I'm getting ready to write them a letter saying, why don't you just meet once a month instead of twice a month?
And get it done faster? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if your meeting is going to be 1 hour and there's no difficult questions being asked, why are they even meeting? Isn't it a waste of the public time?
Well, you know, I can only speak for myself. Yeah, you know, I know a lot of people thought I was irritating, but you know what? They kept watching. And maybe I didn't always ask the right questions or the best questions, but I know that there was a lot of people who learned. What was really interesting is I would ask, quote unquote, one of these stupid questions, and everybody would look to see what the response was.
Right.
And to me, that says that there's some place on that council, somebody was thinking of asking the same thing, but they're either too proud or too arrogant to admit that they don't know the answer. I never had that fear because I wasn't a well-educated person. Everything I learned was by the seat of my pants, and I had to work harder than a lot of those other folks because I came from nothing. I mean, I didn't have any understanding of it.
Right.
So I figured as while I was learning this stuff, I wanted other people to come along with me because I really was ignorant of a lot of things, and maybe I could help somebody else understand it.
Are you ever going to run again?
No, not for the city council.
Not for, but you will run for something.
I don't know. I've thought about, I did the state assembly thing. I think when, I think so, you just kind of have to take stock if that's really where you're best going to serve people. And
right.
I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now, being able to speak so freely and really enjoying this time. I don't know if, my problem would be I'd really want to change things. I'd really want to take the world on, and in the confines and under the structure that we have now, I wouldn't be able to change anything. Not without making some significant changes to campaign finance reform, not the crapola that went out and
right.
All this superficial garbage, the Mike Ellis kind of stuff. If I knew that we could do that, no holds barred, I'd be back out there. But
let's ask Cheryl. You've run for county board
Twice.
Do you plan on running for county board or another office again?
I don't know. Some people have suggested that I should run for council. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm having a good time doing the show right now, and it is still so new. I want to see how it goes, where it goes, and then I'll make a decision. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not saying that I'm going to.
Right.
Who's your next guest? What's your next show going to be about?
Ben Schneider from the school board. We're going to be talking about the boundary stuff that they've been dealing with, the budget.
And the crappy-looking budget. 9 pages of a budget. That's it, 9 pages.
It's deplorable. So we're going to find out why that is.
Yeah.
Well, when you say why, now you've obviously some interest in this Board of Education and their activities. What concerns do you have? What are you going to ask them?
Well, I mean, we haven't sat down and really started putting questions together yet because we don't tape until later in the week. But, when I picked up the budget, it was 9 pages long compared to hundreds of pages for the county. I don't know how big the city's is. It's probably hundreds also. And, even the city of Neenah's school district has a bigger budget than what the Oshkosh area school district has. Some of the things that we are going to be asking him are, why is the district in the situation that it's in right now? Where are some areas of waste? What should the district do differently? And, what are they doing well?
But now you are going to get a particular viewpoint, and this is a viewpoint that is in some ways minority and in a real sense pretty much to the right of center. Are you going to have an opposing view on something?
Like Teresa Thiel?
Yes. Well, we'd like to.
Or Karen Bowen or somebody who's kind of on the other side, because you will definitely get a
very different opinion,
narrow point of view from his standpoint.
We're getting enough time to summarize here. Let me just say, as someone, along with Mr. Mather, who's active in this access type of television, it's very important, if you appreciate these shows, to let the hosts know, because the mainstream media in town is not necessarily thrilled with this type of programming. So this type of programming does need supporters. Once again, Eye on Oshkosh, beginning on November 11th, can be seen on Mondays at 10:30 p.m., Fridays at 1:30 p.m., and Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. You can find out more about the program at www.eyeonoshkosh.com. You can also go to the Channel 10 website. That's www.ocatonline.com. We want to thank Melanie Bloechl and Cheryl Hentz for being here. It's been a great hour.
Thank you guys very much.
We hope that they have us on their show. Until next week, we're Jim Mather. I'm Tony Palmeri. Hope you can join us again then for another edition of Commentary. Take care. Okay, that was great.
Hey, that's fun. I really enjoyed it.